Welcome to this episode of The People Dividend. I'm your host, Mike Horne, and I am absolutely delighted to have in our virtual studio today John Neral, Neral. And John has a unique gift, skill, talent on helping mid-career professionals find the job that they love or fall in love with the job that they have. At midlife, it's such a unique journey, in many cases transformative, to be on the career search and putting all those things together. And John brings all of his experience and passion and energy and talent to that singular focus of helping mid-career professionals find fulfillment and joy in what they do. So John, welcome to The People Dividend. I'll let you say a few words about yourself.
Well, Mike, thanks so much for having me here today and to spend time with you and your listeners. And I appreciate the introduction. There's one thing I would add is just to let people know that prior to starting my coaching practice full-time a little over 7 years ago, I had a 25-year career in education. So I started out as a mathematics teacher at the middle school level, moved up to various administrative type roles, and just really loved my time being in the whole education arena and love the work I get to do now. And of course, we can't work all the time. We have to have a little bit of fun. So I want you and the listeners to know is that I'm a huge game show fanatic. I was on the game show Chain Reaction on Game Show Network a number of years ago. And I am also a professional bowler who won a title on the PBA Regional Tour back in 2010.
Well, are you still bowling?
I am, and actually having a really good start to the year. So now I get to play out with the seniors on the PBA 50 tour, still mostly at the regional level, but I'm throwing the ball really well. So the game's in a good spot right now.
And what are the lessons you've learned from bowling that help with career?
Mike, I've had an opportunity to work alongside of and be coached by 5 gold level certified bowling coaches. There's only 40 in the entire world, and I'm honored to call them friends. And what I have learned about them specifically and about through this whole process with bowling and getting better at your game, everything evolves. The more information we gather, we get to decide and process and synthesize that information with what do we want to do with it? Is that something we want to incorporate, or is that something we want to reject? And so when we think about mid-career, and you said earlier about how mid-career is such a dynamic and transformational time in our lives and careers, we're making those decisions all the time. Do I want to take this experience? Do I want to work on this project? Do I want to go work for this company? And we're making decisions all the time that admittedly we believe are the best for us in the moment. And we just continue to build on them as we hone our craft and grow our career.
I'm making this connection in your work with mid-career professionals that it's both incorporating and rejecting. Why is that?
When we think about the decisions we make in our careers, we're going to turn some offers down. When we first start our careers, Mike, we come out of college or high school and we just want to get to work. That's exactly the goal. We want someone to hire us and give us a chance. But as we start getting more experience, we start understanding what we're really good at and what we want to do versus the kind of work we don't want to do. That's about either incorporating or rejecting those decisions. And the more agency we give ourselves, specifically at mid-career, when someone comes to us and says, hey, I would love for you to take the lead on this project, you may take it and run with it, or you might say, I really appreciate the opportunity, but that's going to take up a lot of my time. And right now, with what I have going on personally, or things that I see my career developing toward, that doesn't really align. So I'm going to gracefully and gratefully decline that opportunity. That's okay.
I see, John Neral. Why is it that, let's talk about agency and the job search. Some people are so stressed out. I mean, they don't feel they have any real sense of agency in the job search. Do you find that at all, or what are your experiences in that regard?
Oh, I find that quite a bit actually, Mike. And it's one of the things when I start working with people one on one is that once people get to the interview process, that we recognize and understand that the dynamic is 51% to 49%. The 51% lies with the organization because they have the power to make you the job offer. But at mid career, if you're not showing up and playing full out as an almost equal party in this process, in terms of interviewing the company, interviewing the hiring manager, making sure that things are the right fit and the right job function you want, let alone talking about your overall compensation and how this job's going to move you forward. That's where the agency piece comes in. It's about making sure that these mid-career professionals understand that they have more power in this process than they realize. And when my clients recognize that they can actually flip the script in the interview a little bit, they have much better interviews. And I'm very happy to say they make much clearer and cleaner decisions when they get those job offers.
No, it's about that 51-49. But how does someone come to work with you, John?
There's a number of ways that they can come to work with me. So, one of the things is, Mike, I've got a number of free resources that are on my website at johnneral.com. Additionally, they listen to the podcast. They'll reach out after listening to the podcast for a while. I have a twice weekly free email newsletter community that provides information. I like to say it's all about feeding mid-career professionals with relevant and useful
Oh,
information to help them.
wonderful.
Yeah, so they can come to me in a variety of different ways, and there's opportunities to work with me one on one if they're interested to really help them, as I say, build that mid career GPS to help them prepare, position, and promote who they are and what they do, so they can show up to find that job they love or love the job they have.
Now, is that what most of the work looks like, John? Is it one on one?
For me right now, yes. The only coaching container I specifically have is one on one private coaching, but I have recently introduced some lower ticket offers into my business. Things like doing a LinkedIn profile audit or some digital courses or digital products that people can opt into, if you will, for a much lower cost or rate.
And why is that important to do now?
Well, in this economy, Mike, I felt it was really important to offer those kind of things because, one, not everybody can afford to hire a private one-on-one coach. But secondly, that not be necessarily what people need. So to have an opportunity to work with me at a different level that doesn't cost as much gives my business some greater flexibility, but more importantly, lets me help more people.
And that is your objective, to help more people who need this kind of help.
Absolutely. Yep. I can't help everybody, but I can certainly put a lot of content out there and different offers and packages to help people when they're ready or meet them where they're at.
People generally want a bigger job, is that right? Like more.
Not always.
Oh,
No, it's such a great question because there are, like, one of the biggest pain points, Mike, my clients have is that they don't want to be stuck. And when I've asked them what stuck looks like, they'll say to me that there's no place for them to move up organizationally on the chart because there's not a position available for them or no one's retiring. Or they'll define stuck as, I know I need to leverage my talents and expertise and take them elsewhere, but I'm raising my small family. I'm taking care of my aging parents. Time is precious. I don't think I have a whole lot of time to invest in a job search. So I'm going to stay here where I'm at and try to figure that out. So for some, it's not always about the bigger job, the increased visibility, and the more money and the higher, better promotion, if you will. Sometimes it's about, how do I find greater balance in the job that I'm in? Because that's what's going to help me survive right now.
When do you have to leave a job, John?
Well, there's a couple of ways, Mike. So the way you phrase that question, yeah, when? So when do you have to leave a job? Ideally, it is when you want to leave. So we're seeing companies right now that are going through layoffs and restructurings, and that's something that always happens. So sometimes that situation is taken out of people's hands, but when you know it's the right time for you to leave a job, it's because of these factors. You don't see a path forward. You don't enjoy the work anymore. You don't want to work in a toxic environment or with a boss or company that's not supporting you and advocating for your career growth. Or you have had all of the conversations necessary to know, and the feedback you've been given to know there isn't a path for you forward, and it is your best interest to step out of that company and go somewhere else.
It's hard to do a lot of times when managers are so bad.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd love for everybody to have a wonderfully supportive, involved, and attentive manager, but you and I both know that doesn't happen. So it is very hard. It's why I say all the time that we are 100% responsible for our careers. If the situation isn't ideal, find a way to make it better.
And do people have to leave? Do most people end up leaving jobs, your clients, or they end up staying?
The majority of the people I work with do end up finding new jobs because that's what's most important to them. But there are some people who I work with and continue to work with that they they've decided to stay where they are. That's the best decision for them. And so a lot of the coaching is really focused on how do they continue to grow internally that still fulfills them professionally.
Many job seekers are disorganized.
Mhm.
They don't go from like step A to step B. They don't see this as an opportunity to engage their problem solving skills or decision making skills. And yet they're incredibly bright and talented people. What gets in their way in the job search?
They think they have to do everything. They're bombarded with all of the things they quote unquote think they need to do because of either what's worked for them in the past or what people are telling them. It's what very often, Mike, leads to mid-career professionals feeling very overwhelmed in the job search. And it's why this idea of building a mid-career GPS is about systematically, step by step, walking them through to do things that yields them greater results and more ROI quicker and more effectively so they don't get that overwhelmed. Look, there's no wrong way to find a new job. You can find a job on LinkedIn or Indeed or any one of the other job boards. You can find a job by networking. It can happen sooner rather than later. It can take a long time. There's no wrong way for anybody to find a new job, but what often gets them stuck or in the way is them thinking they've got to do everything and it's got to be done perfectly.
More and more people are going to be part of the gig economy, John. I mean, we're going to have people who string together jobs and make careers out of them. We're headed to the 4-day work week in the United States. It'll be here. What do you make of this gig economy and employment and satisfaction and empowerment, all things we believe are important relative to employment?
It's such a great question, Mike, because we wouldn't have had this conversation necessarily 10 or 20 years ago. Right? It's how our work and our lives are changing so much, especially after the pandemic. The gig economy for some people, can be extremely beneficial, both from a financial standpoint, but also from a work-life balance or mental health standpoint. The thing that frustrates me about the gig economy, though, is that there are so many people that are out there that are selling a dream that isn't realistic for a lot of people.
Well, I think this is true in a lot of career marketing services, isn't it? Look, I'm an executive coach and organization development consultant. I've got this podcast ranked in the top 10% of global podcasts. I'm going to be a 2-time author. Next book coming out in October, hopefully. The People Dividend, same name as the podcast. 30,000 plus followers on LinkedIn. And to your point, we have to make our offers rise. because that's how we help our clients rise.
Sure.
I'm just wondering what you think about that, John.
Well, yes, we constantly make offers to help people because that's what we do. What we offer people and ultimately what we sell, Mike, is a transformation. You know, look, when something goes wrong with my car, I just want the person to fix it. I don't go to the dealership and ask people, where'd you get your license and certification from? How long have you been doing this? Can you fix my car? Great. Go ahead and do it. What's it going to cost? We get it done. So when we think about where we're moving right now in terms of being so focused on results, the results very simply are, how are you going to help me? And is this going to work or not? And so when we think about elevating people, for people like us who admittedly have more experience and more results than some others, doesn't necessarily mean we're better or worse. It just means we have a proven track record of being able to help people. And that is what ultimately helps us help our clients rise.
Now, what took you from the classroom to this career coaching? It's so interesting to me.
So I was working for an educational nonprofit. I was in a training and staffing director role for almost 5 years.
I see.
Love the organization. I went through a second reorganization and I didn't land well. And in not landing well, what I meant was they greatly narrowed my scope and focus of work, and it wasn't exciting to me. So after much thought, I walked down to my vice president's office, whom I had been reporting to for several years, and I asked her if I could talk to her one day. And she said, yeah. And so I closed the door and I looked at her and I said, I'm going to ask you a question. And I'm going to ask you this question because I trust you. And because I trust you, I believe you're going to give me an honest answer. And however you answer this question, I'm going to say thank you first. Can I ask the question? And she looks at me and she goes, sure, go ahead. And I said, so I've been thinking about this reorg, and admittedly, I haven't landed well. In fact, I kind of think I'm like left on an island to die. So while I'm not at risk of getting fired today, what I see is that I'm not going to get promoted. I'm not going to have my scope of work increased. I'm not getting a raise, and I'm never getting a bonus. How accurate am I? And she looked at me, Mike, and she put her pen down on the desk and she goes, they don't get you. She said, they don't understand all the things you do. And she said, I've advocated for you. She goes, they're just making business decisions that don't involve you. And she said, they kind of paused, Mike, and she looked at me and she goes, you're very smart. And I looked at her and I said, thank you. And 6 weeks later, I gratefully resigned from that position. And I left because I knew I could help more people outside of that organization than I could internally. Absolutely nothing bad to say about them because they were rapidly growing and scaling.
Why say bad?
Because there is nothing bad to say.
Right.
Oftentimes I think people, they hear people leaving jobs or whatever, and they're like, oh, what's the tea or what's the story kind of a thing. That's the story. They didn't really have a need for me. They said, here, John, you can go ahead and do this work. I didn't want to do that work. I made the choice to leave. And I haven't looked back. And it was some of the best times of my career was being there, without a doubt.
But it's better for you now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what, Mike? It's better for them.
How do you know when you have a dissatisfied client?
Oh, well, you ask them.
Wonderful.
You ask them. You ask them a very clean and clear question about what they're unhappy about or what they'd like more of. Oftentimes, we can get a sense when a client is unhappy. They don't respond to emails or they show up for a session and they're not fully engaged. You've got to call that out. That's the biggest part of this business relationship. You got to ask them.
Now, these clients in your business, it's career transition. people want to get the next job or they want to love the job that they have. Do they ever really come back?
Back and do what?
For more coaching services or additional coaching or career coaching? How's that work?
Absolutely. So what happens is that if we're working for a specific amount of time and during that time they find a new job and they enter into it, the remaining of that coaching is then helping them, for example, build a 90-day plan or start off successfully in the new job. When that coaching package expires, we talk about what additional coaching support may look like specifically around things that we've coached on. And one of the things is actually their leadership development. Just transition the coaching. The great part about one-on-one coaching is it can be very tailored and customized to exactly whatever they need.
That's wonderful. And then do these people ever sometimes bring you into their company for presentation or discussion or a workshop?
I have. So, for example, I have one client who over the last few years has brought me in for a full day professional development training with him and his sales team. I've had other clients who have connected me to their human resources department, specifically their employee resources group, and done some virtual presentations for them. So it goes without saying that when you have a client who appreciates working with you and they're willing to bring you up and raise you up to other people, whether it be through referrals or bring you into a company, that's a definite great way to continue to grow the business.
It's like Simon Sinek said, that when we help ourselves, we find moments of happiness. When we help others, we find lasting fulfillment. And it's just what I'm thinking about, the generativity that we could have from job seekers that makes the world richer for their job pain and during the search. Here we are, in the second half of the year. John, if you're going to give our audience, our listeners, our most valued people in the People Dividend enterprise, if you were going to leave some words of encouragement relative to career that will sustain people in the second half, what will those words be? And then we'll wrap.
What I'd offer you and your listeners today is that how we show up matters.
How we show up matters.
When we think about the relationships we build, I talk about showing up from 6 specific strategies. And those strategies are: the S stands for setting ground rules. The H is for having intentional conversations. The O is about owning where you are. The W is about welcoming new opportunities. The U stands for using your genius. And the P is protecting and promoting your brand.
Show up, show up, show up.
Yeah. When you think about what it means to show up and why showing up matters, these 6 strategies encapsulate some really sound business moves, relationship moves, and career advancement moves that more clearly define what it means to work with you, to work alongside of you, to be led by you. And so thinking about how we want to show up day in and day out is, in my opinion, the best way for us to move our businesses and our careers forward.
I think it's such a wonderful way that you're helping others in the world, mid-career professionals, big changes in their lives, such wonderful, practical, direct strategies. And John, just once again, remind people, but just before we wrap up this last time, and it'll be in the show notes. So if you're out walking or driving, or it'll be in the show notes. John, where do people get in touch with you?
Best place is you can find me on LinkedIn at John Neral, or you can go to my website, johnneral.com. It's JOHNNERAL. There's lots of free resources there on the website. And of course, you can find me at the Mid-Career GPS podcast as well.
And until the next episode, I want to say thank you to John. And until the next episode of the People Dividend, stay well.